Well, welcome to 284 Media's Just for the Record. I am your host, Kamal Haynes, and today I will be interviewing Dr. Sandy Underhill. Well, she is an educator by profession, having served as principal at the Elmer Stout High School and the first director of the H. Lavity Stout Community College's Institute of Education. And she will be contesting the upcoming general election under the National Democratic Party as their 4th district candidate. But we'll ask Dr. Underhill some of the tough questions right after this break. We'll be right back with more Just for the Record after this short break.
Angie, how can I get my claims paid quick? Rent's due next week.
CG processes 99% of claims within 5 days. Remember when I was hang gliding with those goats? I caught a gust of wind and flew right into a moving car. Every appendage was in the cast, and they paid fast and fairly. That's what I get for trusting a man with a mustache and an eye patch. Now I gotta go. I'm meeting the guy who bedazzled my toes.
99% of claims are processed within 5 days. CG Insurance. Good like that.
Rashford made it. Manchester United have come from behind to lead.
At home or on the go, watch CCT Live. Download our app and carry your favorite TV shows, news, or live sports anywhere you go. Visit cctbvi.com/live, select your package, and tune in.
We now return with more Just for the Record. Welcome back, viewers. As mentioned prior to the break, joining me on Just for the Record is Dr. Sandy Underhill, who will be contesting the upcoming general election under the National Democratic Party as a 4th district candidate. Well, welcome, Dr. Underhill, and thank you so much for joining us here on Just for the Record.
And thank you so much, Kamal, for having me here today. It's a pleasure.
Okay. Well, let's dive straight into the questions. My first question, of course, all the time is, just tell us about your academic training and professional career.
Oh, wow. So my training and academic career would I would go all the way back to 1993, 94 when I first became an educator. I actually started out in the hospitality field, teaching at the what was then the BVI High School, teaching home economics. Eventually, I would move on to pursue my bachelor's degree in business technology education. Came back to the BVI and continued to work at the BVI High School as a business teacher for a number of years, while also teaching as an adjunct professor at the HL Stout Community College, teaching business studies, law, and computers. Eventually, I would move on to study law in the UK. In 2005, I want to say, I stopped at resigned from the BVI High School, went on to pursue law. So I also have a degree in law, after which I would move and relocate to the United States to be with my younger girls who was then going to college. I actually pursued a master's degree in administration and leadership. And just most recently, having completed my doctorate in organizational leadership with an education concentration. That's a little bit of my academics, yes. Mm-hmm.
And obviously the professional career, being the first director of the Institute of Education. Speak a little bit about your professional career too.
So again, with progressive roles in leadership, starting from teaching from middle school in the United States, high school here in Tortola, also at the college level, assistant principal here for 6 months before I was promoted to being the principal. So with progressive leadership roles and then becoming principal, then becoming the first director of the Institute of Education, very important role. For the first time in the British Virgin Islands, we would have an independent institution that is designated for the training and preparation of teachers, both in-service and pre-service teachers. My role as director is to make sure that the correct policies are in place to guide that process, as well as program delivery for the training and preparation of in-service and pre-service educators in our territory.
Mm-hmm. And for those who may be wondering, what drove you to decide to go into or transition into politics?
So politics for me actually happened as an accident last election, 2019 election cycle. Even as my role as principal, I kind of always knew, without knowing what my next step would be, I kind of always knew that my impact at the Elmo Stout High School would not be something that I would want to do forever. I don't know the reason why, but I saw myself growing in a bigger capacity in terms of giving of myself and service to my community. When the 2019 election cycle began, I was questioned and asked about the possibility or my interest in politics. And I thought about it and said, you know what? I think this is something that suits my values, my principles, my passion, and in terms of even fulfilling my purpose, which I always believe is service to humanity, service to humankind, trying to make people's lives better, which is what I believe politics is about. That is why I entered into the 2019 election race, and that is why I'm here again, contesting in the 4th District for the 2023 elections.
Mm-hmm. And you're obviously in the 4th District, a big district, a district that would have been under former Representative
Vanterpool.
Mr. Vanterpool. Big shoes to fill.
Yes.
Is there any pressure as it relates to, filling those shoes? Obviously, you would have been endorsed by the man himself. Any pressures at all?
Yeah, well, I believe in being honest. Any job or any role that involves the magnitude of dealing with a mass of the masses of the people, the citizenry of not just the 4th District, because that will also extend into the wider community as well. It's challenging, and it would be dishonest of me to say that it is not. I don't feel it's challenging, or I don't feel the pressure. I feel the pressure. But what I will say to the persons out there listening at the sound of my voice is that I'm a fighter. I am not one who is going to make grand promises. I have a plan. I have things that I want to see done in the 4th District. And I believe that I am someone who is respected. I believe that my action in terms of being someone who gets things done has been tried and tested, having been the principal through some of the most challenging years in secondary education, particularly at the Elmo Stout High School, having to deal with coming in, dealing with drugs and fighting on a daily basis with police present constantly on our school campus. A myriad of issues that would then iron itself out to some degree, but then we would have the floods of 2017 and having to deal with those challenges, followed by the hurricanes of 2017, Irma and Maria, and having to put our school back together in a way that would ensure that school was uninterrupted for students and uninterrupted work was uninterrupted for nearly 200 staff. While I understand that the magnitude of what I'm taking on here is bigger, I believe that I have the heart and the tenacity, and I have been proven and tested in terms of someone who can get things done.
Mm-hmm. And you spoke about some of the issues within the 4th District. Speak about some of those issues that stand out right away that you will seek to address if elected.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So we talk a lot about, everybody talks a lot about the economy, which is important. We talk a lot about the infrastructure, and those things are critically important to any nation. But what I want to say here as I answer your question is, as I walk through the neighborhoods of the 4th District, Longbush and Lower Estate, and speak to persons, what everybody's crying out for is immediate assistance. And the assistance seems to be all centered around social services, access to support systems and social services. Things like social security benefits comes to mind as I remember having discussions with multiple persons in the 4th District, persons who would have worked for a number of years and believed that their employers were paying into the social security schemes, and when they would need this money for whatever health reasons and so forth, quickly realizing that they don't have the benefits that they thought they had. This is a major issue, and it's a major issue that speaks to humanity, basic humanity. And those things are near and dear to my heart. Persons who are underprivileged, they may not have the education that would allow them to get the kind of jobs that they need. So they're relying on our social services and social systems for certain types of supports and assistance. To me, when you ask me that question, that is the number one thing that comes to mind. Trying to be an advocate, a fighter, to fix our social systems and social services so that they can better serve the people and make their lives better.
And why should the people of the 4th District choose you over the other candidates? Or why should they elect you over the other candidates?
Let me just say that we have some good candidates in the 4th District contesting. I have great respect for each of them. And to answer your question, born and bred in the 4th, growing up in Longbush, I remember some of my fondest memories being in the Longbush area, crossing the softball field to get to and from school. Back then, the Scatliffe Primary School was Rotown Primary School, and it was housed and located in the same infrastructure as what's now called the Elmo Stout High School. And so that was my stomping ground in terms of the most critical educational years for me all the way through high school. Then having moved to Lower Estate, where I would grow up into basically the woman that I am today. So most of my coming into my adult years was spent in Longbush, where I have most of my memories. So the 4th district is a district that I am not negating or dismissive of anybody else's or any of my opponents' connections to the 4th, but it actually makes perfect sense that I would be the 4th district candidate for the National Democratic Party, having been basically born and bred, as some people would like to say, my navel strings are buried in the 4th. It's a place that's near and dear to me. I understand the people. I know a lot of them because I would have grown up with them. And so I understand the plight of the 4th district. Second to that, I would also like to add, in terms of leadership ability, in terms of skills, in terms of being someone who's been through major issues and challenges, and pretty much my leadership skills were tested and tried. And I would like to think that the community, the 4th district, will look back at my record and recognize that, yes, Sandy is someone who's a fighter. She's someone who gets the job done, and this is what we need in the 4th district.
Mm-hmm. And what are your professional plans after the election if you are not elected?
Even before deciding to pursue this particular candidacy, one of the things that I have been working on is to teach at universities, online university teaching. That's something that I would like to see myself retire doing as part of my career journey. So that is part of what I want to do. Hopefully, if I am not successful, I would be lucky enough to get my job back as the director of the Institute of Education at HLSCC, because again, the plans and goals of the institution were also near and dear to my heart, and I would definitely like to have an opportunity to return back to that position.
Okay. And oftentimes there's a stigma attached to politicians as it relates to thieves, liars, seeking leadership for personal and often financial benefits. What are your views on this particular statement?
Ah, boy, that's a interestingly tough question. But I understand the stigma. The stigma is, I wouldn't say limited to us in the Virgin Islands. It's a global stigma with regard to politicians anywhere in the world. I cannot say that I would defend anybody who has been classified or characterized in that category. I can speak for myself. And I can say that, and it's funny because I have persons asking me, Sandy, are you sure you know what you're doing? Persons that are close to me who knows my background, know where I am, even financially and economically. And I say all the time that my record speaks for itself. I've served in the capacity of teacher, of assistant principal, head of department. I had been in charge at one point of the Mr. and Miss Fifth Form pageant that, well, it no longer happens at the school, but it was a huge part of fundraising efforts at what was then BVI High School. And my record speaks for itself in terms of someone who's trustworthy, somebody who's honest, and somebody who's really in this because I believe with my heart that I have something to offer in terms of my skills, in terms of my experience, in terms of my expertise, but most importantly, in terms of wanting to give of myself in making people's lives better, the betterment of the lives of the people of the Virgin Islands.
Okay. And should you be elected, just give the viewers and your constituents a little preview of what your first few months in office would look like.
We'll be right back with more Just for the Record after this short break.
There goes my new car. Guess I'm back on my bike.
Your bike? CG offers new car replacement. Remember my monster truck days? Well, one night I attempted a 50-foot pogo double backflip. I landed it and went to karaoke. It wasn't until afterward that my car got hit by that fisherman. He gave me some great mahi-mahi though. Anyway, they paid fast and got me in a new car. Now call a cab. I want you to meet my alpaca guy.
New car replacement for the first year of ownership. CG Insurance. Good like that.
Today, I am doing cobbled treatments with Beyond the Reef. Today, we are doing shark research. So today, we are doing whale research with Beyond the Reef. And wherever I go, I take CCT with me because my life is unlimited.
We now return with more Just for the Record. Should you be elected, just give the viewers and your constituents a little preview of what your first few months in office would look like.
Thank you so much. My first few months in office will begin with being an advocate for the 4th District. What do I mean by being an advocate? The first thing, as I said, walking through the district and meeting and greeting persons is beautification. Right away, very quickly, one of my first priorities is to work with other elected representatives to first advocate for the adequate funding to beautify, to revitalize, not just the 4th District, the entire community, but of course, if I am elected, I would be the 4th District representative, so I will be pushing first and foremost for the beautification and revitalization. I believe why I chose that as my answer is because it's a quick and easy fix. It is something that we shouldn't even be facing today under any administration. It's a quick and easy fix. It just needs the correct amount of funding and supports and just to get the job done. That would be one of the first things. The support systems that I spoke about earlier, that is something that very quickly, I think that is an urgent priority in terms of ensuring that people's lives are uplifted. There are people that are suffering economically, people who are in dire need for assistance, support systems from social services. So be a voice in those arenas to fight and to advocate for those sort of initiatives.
Mm-hmm. And what is your take on, as it relates to freedom of information, both not only to the public but also to media?
What is my take on freedom of information? It's a twofold street to walk, because at the same time we have to be wary or aware of the privacy of individuals as well. So I am an advocate for freedom of information when it comes to the media, but also we have to know where to draw the line, and we also have to be respectful of the privacy of individuals as well.
Mm-hmm. And I answer a specific question too, because we know oftentimes around this period of time, election period, candidates are very open to speaking to everyone, being accessible as it relates to interviews and any information needed. But upon election and upon elected, it's very hard to access these now elected people as it relates to they being forthcoming with information. So should you be elected, will you carry on as it relates to being accessible not only to media but also to constituents, not only in the 4th District but across the territory?
That's a wonderful question. I mean, by nature, anybody that knows me knows that I am a person who by nature comfortably and naturally socializes on a daily basis. Very comfortable moving through the district in the campaign cycle, very comfortable going to places that maybe other persons may shun upon, like for example what we call the ghetto. As a principal, that's a place that I would frequent often because my students would be there. And I'm just going back to show you, in answering your question, that this is something that I would not be doing only because I am a politician, but it's something that I do comfortably and naturally on a regular basis. When it comes to interacting with the media, I have to say this. I've always been a person who believes in the power of public relations. It is something that has helped me tremendously when I was the principal of the high school, and persons didn't understand it because some persons would look at it as she was always in the media, she was always on the news, but they didn't understand that my entire approach was public perception, and the only way you can change the public perception is by selling and marketing your product, which is if you're trying to get support, you're trying to leverage public-private partnerships and build and develop new ones. And the best way to do that is to be transparent with the media. Let them know what the ills are, what the challenges are, what the struggles are. Let them see your heart. And that, to me, is a powerful tool to use in building partnerships and relationships with the community. So to answer your question, that is not something that I would give away, because that would be pretty much giving away a valuable asset.
Okay. Oh, we would definitely hold you to that, should you be elected. Okay, my next question as it relates to, should you be elected, are there any particular ministries that you would hope to fulfill or hope to fill,
yes,
should you be elected?
A lot of people would be automatically education. I mean, that's my career path. Over 27 years in education. It may seem like a seamless answer, automatic. And yes, I would like to see myself in education, but I also want the public to know that I believe that I can learn any of the other ministries. I believe that wherever this country needs an advocate and a leader, that is where I would want to be. Of course, my preference would be education, because my background and training, it would make sense. I think I have a lot to offer there. But however, there are other ministries like trade and so forth that I believe that I can also be a good fit for with my business background. So to answer your question, at the top of my list would be education.
Okay, and following that response, my follow-up question, we do know some of the issues within the education system presently, whether it be a shortage of teachers, whether it be a shortage of pay for teachers, whether it be a bullying in schools. How would you seek to address some of these topical issues should you be elected?
Good question. A lot of work has been done in education and continues to be done to advance education and to strengthen the education system in our territory. And I just want to say kudos to all those persons, past and present, who contributed to the advancement of education, past governments, current governments. What stands out to me from where my vantage point is the absence of robust policies. Policies are what provides a roadmap and guidance in any arena, but education is built on policies. Policies to attract, recruit, retain and deploy teachers, policies that speak to certification, policies that sets out the standards for training and teacher preparation, but most importantly, policies that align that training with remuneration. We can't continue to talk about training and the need for advancement and the need for proper preparation in the absence of a simultaneous discussion that speaks to adequately remunerating our educators for the hard work that they do. So these are the kind of things that stand out to me first and foremost. Bridging the gap between the various levels of education. Early childhood, for example, is an area in education that is almost like a standalone because of the independent persons who own these private early childhood institutions. Yes, there are certain regulations, but there's no proper formal linkages that says, or mandates, I should say, for lack of a better word, to mandate the way in which these institutions operate, to ensure that the curriculum, for example, is linked, clearly linked to the next level, which is primary. And then primary is clearly linked to secondary. And then secondary is clearly linked to tertiary. I believe more work needs to be done so that we can have a more cohesive education system in regards to the curriculum and the transfer from one level to the next. Those are the kind of things that in education stand out most to me. Another controversial issue is the additional year, and if you would permit me just a minute to talk about that. So the additional year, like any other new initiative, is not without flaw. It has its issues, but I believe more needed to be done to market the additional year to the public, for the public to understand. For example, the 2 years right after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, where this country would see for the first time place first in CSEC and CXC in the region. I want to say 2016-2017 school year and 2017-2018 school years. The 2 years directly following the worst crisis in the BVI, where the education system and other systems were on their knees in terms of lack of resources. The BVI saw itself rising to first place level, first place status in CSEC. These things are directly connected to additional year. And so it grieves my heart as someone who was there as a principal, who would be part of pushing this initiative forward, that persons in our community don't understand the magnitude of the value of the additional year. So I agree that there are things that need to be improved. For instance, a better relationship with HLSCC to ensure that when students take and pass a certain number of CSEC subjects, that these subjects are also available to them in the tertiary level, so that fills the gap in the 12th grade where they would have been already taken and passed these CSEC exams. So a better relationship that means opening up a wider range, a wider variety of subjects at the tertiary level, so that when you graduate from high school, you have a certain number of college credits, and that significantly minimizes the time spent in college. That's a selling point on its own for additional year. And so, just a better understanding. I wish that, that we were able to market it better and improve upon those areas that needs to be improved upon. But to get rid of additional year, I think, is a big mistake in the education system.
And I have two quick questions on the subject of education, obviously, because that is your forte as it relates to what as you said, the Ministry of Education would be your preferred choice. So let's ask the tough questions.
Sure.
We do know generally there is an issue with schools as it relates to mold, etc., and the infrastructure of schools somewhat being compromised. How could you address this growing issue to ensure that all these schools in the territory are addressed and ensure that the schools that are being built are maintained to prevent such from happening in the future?
That's an excellent question. And again, it speaks to a bigger question about the value we place on education, which is, oh my God, I'm so passionate about that. It's a specific question about maintenance, but it actually speaks to a bigger question about the value we as a people place on education. And that has to change. We have to create a national budget with the understanding that all aspects of our entire being, our entire economy, whether it's infrastructure, education, is given the equal amount of attention and equal amount of resources. So while education may not, give you an immediate turnaround in terms of dollar value that you can see and tangibly feel, we have to start looking at education in the long run, in the long term. What it is doing is building a nation. We cannot have a vibrant economy and great infrastructure without educated people. And so it comes back to what we place and what we hold dear to us, meaning that, to come back to answer your question, adequate funding must be put in our national budget to deal with not just the infrastructure from its initial stages, but the monitoring and evaluating and ongoing sustainability, maintenance of this infrastructure, because it does matter. And so again, it comes back to what we hold dear and what we value. And in my humble opinion, education is just as valuable, if not more, than any of these other things. An educated country, an educated nation, is the foundation on which you can build all the other things: economy, a vibrant economy, infrastructure, and all those other things that we continue to hear our politicians talk about.
Okay, my final question on the subject of education. We have heard the previous, or the current government speaking about the introduction of medical schools, etc., in the territory for far too long, yet we're not really seeing any such institution being established. Should you be elected, are there any plans to bring such schools to the territory to foster that, having people coming into the territory as another form of income potentially? Is there any plans to have any outside institutions developed here in the territory?
That's an excellent question. And so having a medical school here, of course, will help to create economic opportunities, economic opportunities for our locals and for business people here in the BVI. But as you ask me that question, what comes to mind is, I am one of those people who always believes in taking care of home first. We need to look at our infrastructure before making those types of decisions. In principle and in theory, that is an excellent idea. That is something any country should want in terms of advancement for their country, in terms of looking to expand and diversify your economic opportunities. That is a given. But what we need to do first and foremost is to take care of home. We need to, if you have a medical school here, we need to ensure that we have the proper infrastructure, we have the adequate amount of hotels, we have the adequate amount of services and amenities to be able to facilitate what this would require. So when you ask me that question, I can't help but think of it in two parts. Yes, it is valuable. Yes, it's something that should be part of any person's plan. But for us, where we are at right now in the Virgin Islands, that is something that I would see coming as a sort of an intermediate part of my plans rather than a priority. We need to take care of home. We need to ensure that we fix our tourism product, for example, for the existing tourists that we have coming in, fix our infrastructure, fix our services, fix our amenities, and then we can invite the requisite medical school to come here.
Okay, let's switch gears here quickly now. Let's speak about the Commission of Inquiry. Obviously, that has been a major thing in the territory over the last few months, last year or so. I want you to speak on firstly, your thoughts on the overall report and the recommendations, and firstly, how would you assist, considering that the next elected government have to continue the process or the progress that was made from the previous government as it relates to implementing these recommendations? How would you be of value to that?
We'll be right back with more Just for the Record after this short break.
Today, I am doing kamal treatments with Beyond the Reef. Today, we are doing shark research. So today, we are doing whale research with Beyond the Reef. And wherever I go, I take CCT with me because my life is unlimited.
Welcome to Just for the Record, a political mini-series where Ronn Grant, Kamal, Haynes, and Jhaka Wooding sit down with the territory's present and future leaders contesting in the 2023 elections. We're tired of the same old political talking points, so we're doing something about it. We've reached out to every single candidate to ask them the tough questions. For instance, what's your take on same-sex marriage?
Every single person has the right to private and family life. Everyone has their choice, everyone has their opinion, everyone has their beliefs.
I leave it for the professionals.
You should have the right to decide. I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't do it or anything. It's not for me to do.
Marijuana.
Once it's a medical marijuana, then I have no issues with it at all.
I would support that.
Medicinal cannabis can help us with many of the ailments that our people right now are suffering from.
We have to make sure that whatever industry that we invest in, that the economics of it makes sense.
The cost of living.
We will look at all avenues and all the possibilities to ensure that we look at how we can manage the cost of living in this territory.
Living in the BVI based on that minimum wage, I think it's $6.50. How can a family survive?
It's pretty high. Rent prices are pretty high. Can we do something about the prices that within the supermarkets?
And much more, along with the not-so-serious questions as well.
I did drink a lot of guava berry during the Christmas season.
So tune in for the real story on all the territory's candidates running for office. Just for the Record, starting April 4th, 2023 on all our social media platforms, only on 284 Media.
We now return with more Just for the Record. Let's switch gears here quickly now. Let's speak about the Commission of Inquiry. Obviously, that has been a major thing in the territory over the last few months, last year or so. I want you to speak on firstly, your thoughts on the overall report and the recommendations, and firstly, how would you assist, considering that the next elected government have to continue the process or the progress that was made from the previous government as it relates to implementing these recommendations? How would you be of value to that?
So that's a great question, and I'm just going to come away with the gist of the outcome of the report of the Commission of Inquiry. Most of the Commission of Inquiry recommendation speaks to fixing our government structures, and it comes back to the basic issue of transparency and accountability. All of the recommendations, we can go through each one line by line, item by item, but a lot of them are centered around accountability and improving our government structures. So then the question becomes, what do you think about that? That is not a bad thing. It is something that every government official should be striving for and should want for their nation and for their country. In terms of how I would add to that if I were to be elected? And it's a very important question because it speaks to the issue of this, how different this election cycle is, because any elected official, any new government, it's no longer business as usual. And we have to recognize that. Anybody who's taking up candidacy in this election has to recognize that this is not politics of the past. This is not being elected as it were in the past. You are coming in with a mandate to address these recommendations. And so I would like to think that everybody in the race understands that once elected, they have a responsibility, and I take that very, very seriously. I am definitely of the opinion that generally, if it speaks to the improvement of structures, of government structures, even as I myself speak to persons on the ground, you get the sense that this is a critical issue that needs to be addressed. So I believe that once elected, if I am elected, if I do, I'm lucky enough to get the confidence of the people in the 4th district, I will definitely be contributing to advancing the recommendations in terms of improvement of structures, government structures, for accountability and transparency.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another subject matter that is as of great importance also too within your district is filled with a lot of businesses, etc. What are your views as it relates to, or are you in favor more so as it relates to raising the minimum wage?
Whenever I'm asked questions like that, I'm a data-driven person. I am not a person to make decisions on a whim. In principle, again, and in theory, raising the minimum wage is something that anybody would want, any politician would want for their constituents. We also have to look at being able to explain what is a good raise, and it has to be in conjunction with our cost of living. Knowing what I know anecdotally is that the cost of living is high and people are suffering. So yes, in principle, it needs to be raised. However, I would like to have a debate, a spirited debate that gives people the rationale, the reasons why I think that is so. And a lot of it has to be tied to our high cost of living and increasingly high cost of living.
Okay. And next question, another major issue that also affects your district is the issue of sewage as well. What are your views on the current sewage issues in the BVI?
Ooh, here's a tough question. So this has been going on from, I want to say, growing up as a little girl, just hearing adults talking about the sewage issues. I had a conversation recently with someone from the Public Works Department because I wanted to get a better understanding of what was happening. And it's not just limited to the 4th district. It's like you said, it's all around the territory. I believe that from what I am understanding is that it's a major undertaking that will cost millions of dollars to basically restructure or sort of like starting from scratch. What's happening now, what has happened in the past, particularly in the era before the hurricanes, is a lot of incremental fixes to the systems. I believe we have come to a time where we need to start looking at things, I would like to say, in a more innovative way. How can we find ways to gain broader support for justifying the amount of money that needs to be spent to fix these systems? And I think the answer to that, although I'm not an expert, this is an issue that has to be left to experts' analysis and recommendations. But going in, one of my recommendations would be to try to find a way to look at this from an integrated project approach, look at how we can integrate projects with energy, telecommunications, communications, and try to integrate it into one approach that will cause us to get better support for the amount of money that needs to be spent. So rather than going into it as a sewage problem, how can we now do a massive infrastructure overall that fixes several different things at the same time to justify the need for the spending?
Okay, and quickly also too, you do know your district as well as that of the 7th district have been plagued as of recent as it relates to gun violence. What is your position on gun violence, and how would you seek to address this growing issue?
There's so many different facets involved in that answer because the quickest answer, or the most obvious answer in most of our minds would be police, the police force, and how they're enforcing the law. But I tend to look at a lot of the ills, not just gun violence, as a societal issue. Even the way we're raising our children. Churches must get involved. The schools must do their part. Other organizations, public-private partnerships that identify from even before this thing becomes a problem. We need to be looking at preventative measures in our schools, in our churches, in our organizations. We know we have a problem. What are we doing to now preempt and mitigate even before it gets to the level that it is right now? And it's a holistic approach. It is not just something that, yes, we can do better on the police force, and there are issues within there that I wouldn't try to tackle here today. But they are doing the best that they can within the scope and within the supports and resources. I'm sure they will argue that they have. The community may beg to differ. However, it's a holistic approach. These are issues that has to do with mindset, the way we are raising our children to believe that killing is the answer to everything. That a lot has to be said about that, our values, our principles. So we can't just throw that problem onto the police, although they are a huge part of the solution. It has to be addressed holistically, and the entire community has to be involved. Public-private partnerships, in terms of mentorships. How can we mentor young men and even some of our young women from the early stages to prevent and to mitigate some of these issues?
Okay, my final question. Where do you see the BVI in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, depending on who's governing for the next 10 to 20 years, I see the BVI going through first a stage of resetting, recalibration. It's not just about the infrastructure and the physical look of the BVI. I think that as a people, we also have to ask ourselves the tough questions about what we hold dear, our principles, because our values and our principles, I believe deeply, is going to guide the progress and advancement of this territory. What we hold dear, what we want for ourselves as a people, what are our values, because our values are what we take to the ballot box. When we go to the ballot box and we vote for an individual, we are voting for what we believe. And so our belief is what is represented or symbolized in our elected representatives. And then they go to work for us on those values and those principles. So we have to be very mindful where we want to see ourselves. What I would like to see is a BVI that is advanced. For instance, the Road Town area is a modern city that tourists can feel proud to come and say, you know what, let me go back and tell a couple of my friends to visit the BVI because that's the place to be. Now, we have come a long way. And kudos to all legislators, past and present, who have contributed to the advancement of this country. But we have a long way to go. And again, I will always come back to principles and values of the people, because values are what vote, and the elected representatives represent our values and what we hold dear.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I want to thank you, Dr. Harrigan Underhill, for your time here on Just for the Record and for joining us and obviously responding to all the questions I would have posed to you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Kamal. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Viewers, that's all we have for today's Just for the Record. Until next time, I'm Kamal Haynes. Hope you enjoy the content. Bye-bye.
There goes my new car. Guess I'm back on my bike.
Your bike? CG offers new car replacement. Remember my monster truck days? Well, one night I attempted a 50-foot pogo double backflip. I landed it and went to karaoke. It wasn't until afterward that my car got hit by that fisherman. He gave me some great mahi-mahi though. Anyway, they paid fast and got me in a new car. Now call a cab. I want you to meet my alpaca guy.
New car replacement for the first year of ownership. CG Insurance. Good like that.